Hello everyone, my name is Yanis and welcome to our seventh event. This is gonna be about DevOps and specifically we're gonna talk about Ansible and Vagrant. To start with, I'm gonna tell you how I started experimenting with virtual machines and why I needed them in order to learn how to use Linux. To begin with, I'm gonna make a small introduction to virtual machines and how they work on your system. And I've created a very amateur diagram I'm going to share with you. So let's imagine that this is our computer. And well, everything starts out with the hardware, your hardware, which is everything is managed by your kernel. In my specific case, it's Linux. And on top of the kernel, we have the user-space programs with our shell and user applications that I'm running right now. For example, I'm using OBS to stream. Vagrant is running on the background. Ansible, I'm gonna use it um, in a few minutes to start provisioning. And Firefox is the web browser I'm using to check my stream. Before we start, I'm gonna ask the audience if you can hear me and listen to me properly, because this is the first time that I'm streaming live with using OBS. If anyone can answer me in the chat. So, on this diagram, as you can see, there's a small part in the kernel that's called the hypervisor module. This is a kernel module that runs in kernel space, and it creates a virtual hardware set for our virtual machines. So we've got here two virtual machines on this diagram, VM_1 and VM_2. And our hypervisor module is mimicking hardware like they would do, like a Linux, like a kernel would do on top of regular hardware. And as you can see in the VMs, we can run whatever user space programs we can. Right here, I have some examples. For example, Samba, it's a media server. Plex server, which is a video sharing server. We can, never mind. Here we have a web server, Apache and Active Directory. We're not gonna talk about it right now. And so this is basically what's it like when you run a virtual machine in your computer. You've got your main applications, and you've got two more systems running in parallel with your main system, but they think they run on their own hardware. If you want to see how it works on the server, I've made another even worse diagram right here. On a bigger server with more cores and more RAM, you can run more virtual machines. And right here, we've got hypervisor running on top of the hardware. You could use VMware or Proxmox or any other hypervisor to do that job for you. And here we're running 4 virtual machines, VM_1, 2, 3, and 4, and we've set up different applications in each of those virtual machines. Basically, it's like running multiple servers in one with the ability to provision them differently and run different operating systems in each one. For example, VM_1 could have CentOS running on it, VM2 could have Arch Linux running on it, and VM3 or 4 could run BSD. Or even you could create a virtual machine with Windows Server, for example. So why run virtual machines? Why use them? Well, when I started out experimenting with Linux, I kept breaking my system every other day. I tried to install new applications and new software, but I had no idea how to do that. So at some point, I decided that I should probably experiment using a virtual machine, and I started by creating virtual machines using a GUI. For example, VirtualBox is a great application with a graphical user interface. And every time I broke the virtual machine, I had to destroy it, delete all the files, start a new one, click 150 buttons until I'm ready to deploy a new virtual machine to experiment with. And it got really boring at some point. So how is Vagrant and Ansible is going to help us with it tonight? What is Vagrant and what is Ansible? Vagrant is an application that runs on top of your hypervisor, either libvirt or VirtualBox, and it can manage multiple VMs and create multiple VMs with a single command using something that's called a Vagrant file. It's similar to a Docker file if you've ever used a Docker file, or maybe more like a Docker Compose, but it's using Ruby instead of YAML to configure it. So now let's talk about Ansible now. What is Ansible? Ansible is a tool that you can use to provision your systems and manage your configurations across multiple devices. Mainly, you use it for servers, and sometimes you could even use it for your desktop, to provision your desktop. Let's see how we can start with Vagrant. First of all, I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a new virtual machine using Vagrant. Vagrant on top of your existing setup. For example, I am using Virtual Machine Manager, which is Virt Manager in the repository of Ubuntu. You could use VirtualBox if you want. There's no difference. I just prefer this software because it's a bit easier for me to manage. I'm gonna put this on the side for now, and we're gonna visit Vagrant Cloud, and we're gonna find a generic version of Ubuntu. As you can see, there are plenty of versions made by the company that makes Vagrant. I'm gonna go to the next page to find Ubuntu 20. Let's use Ubuntu 2010 this time. And here's the instructions on how to use Vagrant. I think it's pretty simple. You just create this new Vagrant file to run a virtual machine using the generic version of Ubuntu 2010. The generic here is just that they haven't made any changes to the virtual machine. I hope you can hear me. I haven't gotten any feedback yet. Anyway, I'm gonna keep going and hope everything is going fine. If you don't want to use a Vagrant file in the beginning, you can start with a couple of commands. You could initialize a virtual machine and then use Vagrant app to start the virtual machine. And I think I'm gonna do it right now. I'm gonna copy the command and open a terminal. I'm gonna paste this command in the terminal and hope that it can download. Okay, I think that I already have the virtual machine image downloaded, so it's gonna be a bit easier. Now I'm gonna run Vagrant app. And I've got to download the image, unfortunately. Okay, it's gonna take a longer time because I'm streaming. I'm gonna change this to 2004 because I have already got the image on my computer right now. Vagrant init. Okay. I'm gonna close this window. We don't need it anymore. While we wait, you can see that it's setting up the virtual hardware instead of having to do everything manually. It's done automatically for you. And if I open my directory, you can find here that we've created a generic Vagrant file configuration with a lot of comments, which I'm gonna delete because we don't really need. And this is it. This is all we need to run the virtual machine. Now, if I open libvirt again, the virt manager, you can see we've got a virtual machine running right now, and we can use Vagrant SSH to connect to the virtual machine using SSH. And as you can see, we're in a completely different system right now. You can see the hostname right here. It's called Ubuntu 2004. So why is this useful? It's a bit useful when you want to run multiple machines at once, or when you want to configure a specific setup and bring it up and down very easily. So let's see how easy it is to close that VM now. You can use Vagrant destroy, and I'm gonna say yes, and it deleted the VM. And since we've got the image already in our computer, it just creates a clone, and as easy as that, we have a new virtual machine running right now with everything formatted. So although it looks like the same VM, the hard disk is completely clean, the virtual hard disk actually. As easy as that. Now we can start setting up some more configurations in our config file to show you some more features. We don't need any of the comments. As you can see, the language of the configuration is Ruby. Don't worry, you don't have to learn Ruby to use a Vagrant file, to create a Vagrant file. You just copy-paste stuff from the internet, which is basically how most people develop in the beginning. And one extension that I've downloaded is a plugin, actually, not an extension. List plugins. I've downloaded. I don't remember the command, or I'm typing it wrong. Anyway, there are some plugins for Vagrant. One of them is called a host manager. You just install it using a command called Vagrant install plugin. I think should be more prepared for that. Yeah, Vagrant plugin install. This is our command. This is the command that installs the plugin, as easy as that. And this will help us give host names. Actually, it's gonna help us SSH or control the virtual machine using a name instead of an IP address. Right now, the IP address of our virtual machine is a bit random. We can connect to it using SSH to see the IP. As you can see, the IP is 192.168.21.95. It's a subnet. It's a private subnet. But it's not really convenient for us to use a random IP address every time we want to provision this machine or connect to it via SSH. And what the host manager does is that it creates an entry in our etc hosts file to be able to use a name that we want to connect to it. For example, we can name this virtual machine Ubuntu. Now let me show you how you can create more configurations for more virtual machines. I have something already made right now. And I have to destroy the Vagrant virtual machine to make sure that we don't run into any problems. Hope it's not too late to destroy it. Okay, it's gonna ask for my password because I installed host manager and it tries to edit a file that's not in my home folder, home directory. This is useless. Okay. I'm gonna change the IP to the one that we had before. This is not supposed to be here, I'm sorry. We're gonna name it Ubuntu, and we're gonna give it another alias that's gonna be Ubuntu 2004. Great. So what is this going to do? This is going to create a new virtual machine with 4 cores, 4 virtual cores, and we're gonna also wait. Let me try to zoom in to make this a little easier for you to read. We're gonna pass through the cores, which is gonna be using KVM. It's not important right now, and it's gonna use 2 gigs of RAM. We don't really need any more than that right now. And this is an alias that I've given to the virtual machine in order to configure it. Sorry, I'm gonna change this to VM. This is the alias, and this is the name of the VM. Sorry for the miscommunication here. Now let's try to use Vagrant app to create the virtual machine. As you can see, it creates a new virtual machine with only 4 cores and 2 gigs of RAM. It's updating our etc host file with the name that we've given here, Ubuntu. So I can use SSH Ubuntu to connect. Okay, could not resolve. This is unfortunate. Yeah. We're gonna use Vagrant SSH to connect it. And now we're gonna start playing around with the virtual machine. First of all, we're gonna try to update it. Update the repos. As you can see, it's working fine so far. I hope I don't create any issues with my stream, because I've never streamed before and I have no idea how this is gonna end up. And now we're gonna upgrade all the packages. I hope it doesn't take too long. So this is some form of provisioning right now, installing updates. And whenever you're trying to test your software, if it runs properly on a specific distribution, you should always install the latest package versions of your installed packages. And let's finish with this one. So if you've got to do this manually every time and then copy over your configurations and edit some files to add your configurations manually using SSH, it's gonna get a little tedious at some point. So what Ansible does is it creates a connection using SSH with as many virtual machines as you want, and you can provision them, or you can provision as many of them as you want using one host. We're gonna call our main computer, the local host, and every other server that we want to provision, we're gonna call it a remote host. In this case, since we don't have a remote host to say literally a remote host, we're gonna use the virtual machine as a remote host. It doesn't affect our experimenting right now. Now, what exactly is Ansible? Well, Ansible, how do you use Ansible? You install it first of all. I'm gonna exit from the virtual machine, and you can install it either using your package manager, I've already got it. Okay, I haven't installed it using my package manager. I've installed it using pip, the Python package manager. I'm not going to install it now. If you're on Windows, I have no idea how you're going to set this up because it doesn't really play well with Windows. You have to use WSL2 or WSL1 to use Ansible on Windows. So tough luck if you're using Windows, switch to Linux. And I've created a file called the playbook. This is how we're going to start using Ansible right now. And if you haven't seen YAML before, the three dashes on top is just a declaration that the new YAML file starts, and this is the name of our playbook. So we can see it in our terminal when it starts running. That what playbook is playing right now. We're gonna use this is a keyword of Ansible. That means that you're gonna run this playbook to all of our hosts. We're gonna see what hosts are in a moment, and from here on we start creating tasks. Now, how exactly are you gonna write tasks in YAML? Well, everything is done for you in a way, because if you Google Ansible, I should have created a new profile on Chrome for that. Ansible copy, for example. Let's say you're gonna copy a file from your computer to the virtual machine. There's already a module called Ansible built-in copy. We only need the last part of the name to copy files from your either from your local host to your remote host, or your from your remote host to your remote host, like a local copy. I just saw the comment from Jim. Yeah, it should be the same on WSL, but then you're not gonna be using Ansible through Vagrant so easily. If you install it using WSL, you're gonna have to use Vagrant in WSL, and it's gonna have to communicate with your hypervisor, which is gonna be running on Linux. Otherwise, you're gonna have nested virtualization, which doesn't work so good. Anyway, so let's create the task that's gonna copy our diagram that I showed you before to our virtual machine that we created right now. First of all, we give a name. Sorry. First of all, we add the dash, which is this creates a list in YAML. I'm sure that some of you have seen it before in Docker files. We're going to give it a name. We're going to say copy draw IO diagram to VM. We're gonna use the module copy, which is this one. And actually, let me show you how you can just read the documentation to use it to create a task for yourself. The required options here are those that you must add. For example, the destination and the source path are needed to copy the files. Here we have a destination, which is called dest as a keyword, and we're gonna put it in /home/ I'm gonna use the tmp folder for this, and we're gonna call the file diagram.drawio, and in order for Ansible to pick this file up, we're gonna create a new folder called files, and we're gonna put the diagram in this folder so it's easier for us to pick it up. src, I think, is the code word for source. Yes, src. And since we gave the same name to the task, we're gonna copy and paste it here. So this is a task to copy a file from your system to your virtual machine. But remember, it's not just one virtual machine, it copies it to all of the virtual machines you want. But how do you define the hosts now? Well, in Ansible, you're gonna create a hosts file, which is gonna be using actually, I'm gonna create a host.yaml file because I prefer YAML for this. And we're gonna add the keyword hosts. Give me a moment. Okay, first we should probably add the 3 dashes on top. Now, hosts is a keyword in Ansible that is a group, and inside we can put the IP of our virtual machine. Oops. The IP of our virtual machine. Since it has to be an object, you add this symbol, which for some reason I can't remember it right now. I'm sorry. Anyway, the hosts have to be inside the all group, and make sure that you indent the every object properly, because YAML is a bit picky on the spacing and the indentation. You must use spaces instead of tabs, even if you don't want to use tab to use spaces. I'm sorry. So let's try to actually copy this file to our destination. For this, we're gonna run the command Ansible playbook, and we're gonna use the -i to specify our inventory, which is gonna be host.yml, and we're gonna run the playbook that's called playbook.yml. And let's see if it runs. This doesn't have to do with Ansible. This has to do with SSH. If you try to connect to a new SSH, to a new connection with SSH, you're gonna get a fingerprint for safety. We're gonna say yes. And as you can see, the host is unreachable. Why does this happen? Well, as you saw before, when I tried to use SSH to connect to our computer in Ubuntu, we've got some issues because Vagrant creates a user inside the virtual machine that's called Vagrant, with a password also Vagrant. But my username is Yanis, so when I try to SSH to Ubuntu without a username, it tries to connect to a user called Yanis. But if I use the Vagrant, if I use Vagrant SSH, Vagrant takes care for me and connects properly. And we can run IPA to see the IP again of our machine and make sure we've added the proper IP to our hosts. As you can see, the IP changed because why did it change? Oh, sorry. We've got 2 controllers because I ran it 2 times and I gave it 2 different IPs. And now our host has 2 IPs. Anyway, that's unfortunate. That happens sometimes on live demos. Anyway, so the main thing that you have to know is that you have to create a host file on your local host. But for this demonstration, we're not going to use the host file since we don't have a proper remote host. We are going to use a built-in provisioning system that Vagrant provides for us, which helps us run a provisioner like Ansible after Vagrant app, and you can use it by adding a new block of code in your configuration in your Vagrant file. Config.vm provision is it's just the way that you define which object you're gonna edit, and we're gonna add Ansible playbook, not site. It's gonna be named playbook, and I think this is enough. We're gonna close this section with an end, and let's destroy the virtual machine and try to connect it. Vagrant destroy to destroy it. I'm sure. Okay, and now I'm gonna use Vagrant app to try to create a fresh virtual machine. As you can see here in my configuration, my GUI window, I can see that it uses the new name that I've given to the virtual machine, vg-machine1, and it's gonna run our provisioning playbook. So what are you seeing right now? This is the end of Vagrant, and this is the beginning of Ansible. So the first thing that Ansible does is gathering facts for the host, for the remote host, and it starts running all of your tasks. We only have one task in our playbook, so it finished really fast. And if we wanna play around, I think that I hope my computer can handle it, but I'm gonna create a new another virtual machine to show you that you can run your playbooks in multiple virtual machines at once and configure multiple of them at the same time. I'm just gonna copy paste this. I'm gonna change the IP so we don't have any conflicting IPs here. I'm gonna rename this to Ubuntu 2 and Ubuntu 2.20.04. I'm gonna lower the cores to 2 in case I've got any issues with my system. And I think we can run Vagrant app again. This is clearly not rehearsed, and this is clearly not very well prepared, as you can see. But let's hope it goes well. All right, now we are gonna see that, okay. For some reason, it only created a single VM, maybe because I didn't change something that should have changed. This is embarrassing. As you can see, we've only got one VM working. All right, I think that okay. There is an issue with my configuration with my Vagrant file, but we can also ignore this for the time being. Now, I'm gonna jump back to using Ansible properly without using Vagrant, and we're gonna try to connect to Vagrant using Ansible playbook instead of the provisioner that Vagrant provides for us. Now we have to define some variables. One of them is called Ansible user. I hope. And Ansible pass. This has to be in quotes. And this also has to be in quotes. And what else do we have to do? We have to add the key because we've already added the password. Okay, I think that we might be able to run it now, but I'm not promising anything. Let's see. Okay, this is an issue with SSH because since we destroyed the VM and we created a new one, we kind of changed the fingerprint of the virtual machine, and now SSH is running into an issue. I'm gonna try to use SSH to get the issue from there. '68. All right, I'm gonna run this command to delete the entry. Let's try to SSH again. It's connected. Let's try to use Vagrant at the IP. Okay, we connected. We are probably ready to run our playbook. All right, it finally works. I'm glad. Now, as you can see, now it says OK instead of changed. This just means that we've already copied our file and it already found the copy there, so we didn't copy it again. And this is going to help us if we do a lot of, if we run a lot of tasks at once and we don't know if something is changed or not. Now, let's try to make this playbook a little bigger by adding a role. Now, what are roles? Roles are a lot of tasks combined. I'm going to show you one of mine. I should have this open, should have had this open earlier. Ansible role security. Okay, what are roles? Roles are a collection of tasks that do a specific thing. For example, this role creates some install fail to ban, and it creates some rules for SSH for SSH to be more secure. It creates some admins, and also it does some updates when you're running Red Hat or Debian. It can run on both distributions. This is a forked role, so I didn't do all of the job. Jeff Gerling did most of it. He's also a great guy. He wrote the book of Ansible for DevOps, and it's a great book. Yeah, you can watch his videos on YouTube. He's great. He's much better than me at explaining what Ansible is and how it works. So let's try to add the role to our playbook to just see how it's added. Ansible role. My GitHub ID and the name of the role. Now, if I try to run this this playbook, we're gonna run into an issue because you're gonna run into an issue because you wouldn't have this role installed. So you're gonna use Ansible Galaxy install and the name of the role. This is already installed on my system. If I want to update it, I can use Forge. You can just install it on your system. It's gonna be installed in your home folder, I think, so you're not gonna risk infecting your computer with something. And I'm gonna now start play the playbook again. The offending lines appear to, okay, this is a typo. The role isn't a tax. This should be in the same indentation as the tasks are. Let's try again. Okay, this has to be a list. The offending, okay, let's do the error message together. Line 3, Okay, as you can see, let's see the playbook running. We've got some error. I'm gonna explain the error again later. Let's see the error here. It says line 2, column 3. Unfortunately, in line 2, column 3, we didn't have any error. The error was here. I wrote a role instead of roles, but the error message wasn't very specific and didn't help me very much. That's the bad thing about YAML. This is a list item. The whole thing is a list item. So Ansible sometimes could mess things up if the issue is in the first part of the spacing here, like roles, task, or host. If you have any issues, any typos here, you're gonna have a hard time finding it using the error message. Now let's see why this failed. It tried to update, and we had an issue trying to unlock, trying to use sudo. Basically, this role requires us to run sudo inside the playbook because some of the commands include updates. So we're gonna add the keyword become true, which is gonna give us sudo privileges. And as you can see, it now runs. Also, it's skipping a few things, as you can see here, because it checks if our virtual machine is a Red Hat distribution or it's or a Debian one. It makes some changes. It creates an admin. This is just a placeholder. It's called, the username is admin, and the password is either test or admin. I don't remember what's my default password for this role, and it's done. So as you can see, we did 7 changes. We updated. We installed the unattended upgrades package on our virtual machine or remote host. We did some changes. We created a new user with a new password, and it added some SSH public key so we can connect to our virtual machine using a public key. And it also set the default shell to bash. And those are the configuration that I do in my SSH file. Sorry, in my etc/ssh config file. It's different in Debian and Red Hat. Depends on your distribution. Anyway, what was the benefit of doing it with Ansible? Well, imagine that you have a script like I have written a playbook right now, and I want to test it on to create a base for a development environment, and to install Docker, to install MongoDB, and any other application that your own application requires. You can just create a playbook and run it every time the virtual machine is created. So you can test your application in multiple virtual machines at once, or multiple desktop environments if it's a GUI application using a specific toolkit that doesn't work the same everywhere. Or if it's a web application, you can see if it works properly with different versions of a database or a dependency, for example. There's a lot of documentation about Ansible that you can see, you can find online. You should probably read the book Ansible for DevOps, written by Jeff Girling. He's a great guy. His book is awesome. And what else should we do? I don't see any comments during the whole presentation. We can see how a more advanced playbook is written. So imagine that this tasks folder is in our main directory right here. And actually, we're going to create a new folder named tasks and another directory called roles. In here, you can add files. Let me show you. I can copy this task from here and I can add it in here. We have to change the indentation to align with the beginning of the line and add the 3 dashes on top. I forgot to change my output, I'm sorry. So what was the point of this? Well, as you do in programming, you have to move things from your main, let's say in this case, playbook, maybe it's a script, maybe it's a program. You don't have all of the things in the same package. So I just removed the task from here and placed it in another file called tasks.main.yml. And now I can use the include, give me a second. I can use the include task. Actually, let's Google that together. If I can type today. Include tasks, okay. I could have misspelled that, so thank God I Googled it. You can see we have examples at the end of the documentation, so you can get an idea of how to use this in your own playbook. I'm just gonna copy paste this and I'm gonna add it in my playbook. As you can see, it's under the tasks object. So we're gonna change the name to copy stuff, and we're gonna include tasks /main dot yml. Sorry. And we don't need any of the following lines. It just simply includes a file. And try to run the playbook again. As you can see, whenever you run a playbook, it starts out with the roles first and then goes to the tasks. And now that we run the same role twice, you can see that all of the tasks are either included or skipping or okay, which means that it didn't make any changes. And of course, the copy we did create ourselves says okay, since the object is already, the file is already copied. Now, whenever you've got something changed in your configuration and the change counted here is more than 0, when you expect it to be 0, it means that either something wrong is going on with your system or something wrong is going on with your playbook. Because Ansible, whenever you make a change to a file or a configuration, or you install something with using playbook, using an Ansible playbook, Ansible always checks if what you are going to do is already done and doesn't do it. How does it do it? It's a YAML is what we call a declarative language. So you don't care about how it's gonna do it. You just care for the result. So you just say, I need this file to be copied there to that location. We don't care how it goes there and if the file already exists. You just have to put there where I asked and with a specific content. And for example, we can delete the file we want from the directory, and we can add the state. Don't remember the keyword for state, but that's why we've got Google. We've got the documentation, sorry. State. Sample file. Okay, this is not the first time. Oh, sorry. we're trying to find the okay, copy doesn't have this keyword. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try to find file. This is probably the one that I'm looking for. All right. So I'm gonna just copy paste the task and I'm gonna add it there and remove draw IO diagram. The location is tmp/diagram. State absent. As you can see, the way we write it in YAML, we don't say deleted or delete the directory. You just say that you want that specific file to be absent. If the file doesn't exist, it doesn't try to remove it and fails. It checks first if the file is there, checks the content and the content of your source file, and when you try to copy, and only if there is a change to do, then it does it. Let's try to run this playbook again. It's gonna create it's gonna run through the first row that's gonna be really fast, and then it's gonna delete. It's gonna copy the file, which is already there, and then it's gonna delete it. If I run this playbook again, I'm gonna delete the row to make it faster, to make it run faster. If I run it again, it's gonna run all those two tasks, and it's gonna fail because I added the state line and never removed it. Now, every time I run this, it's gonna say changed because I first copy the file, so it makes the change, and then I remove it, so the remove changes again. If I say here present, no, present isn't an option. Maybe I should say state file. As you can see, nothing changes. Anyway, I don't want to dive very deep into Ansible and tell you how to create very specific tasks or do something specific. I just wanted to give you an idea of how you can quickly create a Vagrant file and start up your own VMs and then provision them with Ansible. I'm not a great teacher to show you how to write the perfect playbooks and the perfect tasks, but just a few notes I'm gonna give you is that create tasks using the pre-made modules, because there is the module called shell and the module shell command, which can run shell commands or bash scripts straight through Ansible, but those are not those are always gonna say that they are changed by the end of the playbook. So you're gonna have an issue finding if your configuration management works properly or not. Anyway, if we have any questions, here to answer any of them. Something maybe that has to do with Vagrant, virtual machines, or Ansible. Otherwise, we are done, and we're gonna see you when we see you. We are not gonna announce our next event yet, but we're gonna announce it in the following days. I don't see any questions, so I'm gonna try to see how I can end the stream, because this is the first time that I'm streaming using OBS. I'm gonna wait for a few seconds to make sure that we don't have any questions. All right, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for watching the video if you reached to the end, and see you all next time. Goodbye.